Hello and welcome back to my channel. So today we are finally getting into the swag era, and I say finally because I feel like I promised this video almost a year ago, but y'all are getting it today and I'm excited to say that. So in today's video, we're going to be taking a little trip down memory lane, down the streets of swag, and we're not just going to be talking about swag era songs, we're also going to be getting into the fashion, the dances, the whole era. I'm excited, but before we get into it, I just do want to put a flash warning over this video because, you know, a lot of it is dance related, flashy, and so there is a lot of strobing. So let's go ahead and get into the swag era. The swag era, which was in full effect by the late 2000s, lasting until the early 2010s, was a colorful, prominently youth-focused subculture ruling music and fashion in equal measure. It originated in the hip-hop community and doesn't necessarily point to a specific genre or sound, but rather an attitude. Mainly, swag music is about your swag, your style, and we can see that musically, the songs themselves often reflected that artist's personal flavor or even just current musical trends. So some of the earlier stuff like Soulja Boy might be more trap or southern hip-hop sounds, but then like Swag It Out is going to be electronic pop, accounting for the differences in both trends at the time and likely intended audience. Swag isn't a new word. Swagger describes a type of walk, with either attitude or confidence, walking, like you own the place. The earliest recorded usage of this dates all the way back to Shakespeare, with several claiming he invented the usage of the word swagger in this way. More broadly, swagger can be used to describe an overall essence of coolness. It's easily noticed, yet doesn't have to make a big deal of itself. Usually this is tied to fashion, like I mentioned, or some other attribute that communicates coolness. And this fascination with swagger, what makes people cool, what cool people do, how they sound, this is obviously not new either. Even all the way back in the 19th century, some men were concerned that swagger was on the permanent decline because, every generation gets to that point where they think they've seen and done all the cool things there are to do and see. Little did they know the swag era was coming in like 100 years or so, though. There's an article addressing this very topic called The Decline of Swagger in a scientific journal from the time period simply titled Science. And I found this quote, which I really liked, and I do think applies well to this video and just aesthetics in general. It reads, "Swagger nowadays is mainly limited to people living in little worlds of their own. Contact with the big world and realities rub it away. Petty country squires buried in remote neighborhoods often give themselves airs most comical to behold by those capable of comparing what they are with what they claim to be." The way I interpret this is that swagger is something independent. It's inauthentic if it's impersonal to you, and it can only be formed by having a pretty strong internal world or sense of self. This, in my opinion, doesn't mean that you're completely trend averse, rather that you can't be influenced to wear and do every single trend if it truly doesn't resonate. But when you're around more people, once more eyes are on that specific trend, it can become watered down. Or when you have more things in life to worry about than your style, your swagger, it can also decrease a little bit. And that final sentence essentially says those who overperform and inauthentically overperform their swag, they may not know it because they're in their echo chamber, but those who know what real swag is, they can clock the fakers easily, and it's funny. Think of that in terms of a person perpetrating, misusing the slang, the I finna be in the pit. You can't fake swag, you can't fake identity, faking aesthetic to fake identity fools no one. I found a Slate article in which they tried to determine the first musical use of the word swag. Not the word swagger or the concept, but the shortened swag. I did the same thing, but they offered some examples that definitely went past me. And the first usage they found was from 2003, when Jay-Z used the word on public service announcement claiming,
"Check out my swag, yo, I walk like a ball player. No matter where you go, you are what you are, player."
In my own mental musical swag timeline, the first mention of swag I could remember hearing was Janet Jackson and her song Feedback, which was released in December of 2007, simply because this lyric is unforgettable. She announces proudly in the Dark Child produced song,
"You'll find another chick better than I don't see her, 'cause my swag is serious. I'm living like a first date period."
This song comes up in my shuffle pretty often because I do like it. The chorus is catchy, but every single time that period lyric is gonna make me laugh. But again, here Janet is like, there's no one flyer with more swag. I don't think it's a coincidence that the early swag usages come from more seasoned artists like Jay and Janet because it's not a new term, one. But also, if you're a rapper like Jay-Z or even someone like Janet who's pop and R&B leaning but obviously works with artists and producers in that hip-hop overlap, she's not going to be unfamiliar with the term either. The idea of swag or swagger would be nothing new to them, even musically, because so much of hip-hop is based around that braggadocio, that self-assuredness you need to possess and be loud about in order to make it. Still, there were several artists in the late 2000s who burst into the public consciousness with either a swag-themed or a swag-referencing song. MIA's Paper Planes, a sort of satirical immigrant story, tells the tale of passport counterfeiters who simultaneously live a life of crime and the so-called American dream. And I'm sure this was definitely also meant to play on post 9/11 heightened xenophobia for brown people. In the second verse, MIA states, "No one on the corner has swagger like us. Hit me on my banner, prepaid wireless." Here, the swagger is definitely coolness, but deceptive coolness, because she's talking about robbers and counterfeiters. In a way, you might also take it as appropriative coolness, or stolen swagger, if you will, if that swagger is a result of stolen clothes, money, or jewelry. But even being able to use swagger for deceptive purposes, that points to how it is a means of social capital. You can be a scumbag, but if you have swag, people might still fall for the okie doke. And I was thinking additionally, maybe the swagger is also the sense of accomplishment of running the streets, making ends meet however you have to, and being hardened from that, which can also be a little clout or social capital. And that makes a lot of sense if you look at the fact that the song was sampled in Jay-Z and T.I.'s Swagger Like Us, which also features Lil Wayne and Kanye West. Seems like the song was made pretty quickly after Paper Planes became a hit because it was released in September of 2008, so just a month after Paper Planes debuted on the charts and just a couple weeks before it hit its peak. But it was a popular song to the point where that sample would be identifiable, hence using it to begin with and releasing while the original song is still making its run. Unlike Paper Planes, Swagger Like Us isn't about being an immigrant. Rather, each of the four rappers gives a brief verse on their come-up story, so to speak, taking a minute to be like, yeah, I hustled for this and now I'm on top. And of course, each verse is tailored to their background. So Jay talks about going to the School of Hard Knocks, for example, and then in his opening, T.I.'s like, Kanye's not street like us, but he is here for diversity. And Kanye did produce this song.
You go see Weezy for the wordplay, Jeezy for the birdplay, Kanye's for diversity, and me for controversy.
I know it's Kanye, and I know it's just music, but I noticed in his verse, he says, the swagger on 100,000 trillion, ayo, I know I got it first, I'm Christopher Columbus, y'all just the pilgrims. I understand that in 2008, we weren't as Columbus critical as we are now, and that the point of the line is to be like, no, I found it first, I'm the swag originator. I get it, technically. But still, using Columbus as a reference is funny because when you hear it, you project your own understanding onto it, so you're like, this makes no sense. Unless you're saying I wasn't here first either, I just got here before you did, or I just got the credit. And so clearly Swagger Like Us was also very popular, and it peaked at number 5 on the Hot 100 and went on to go platinum. For comparison, Paper Planes peaked at number 4 and has since gone 3 times platinum. And like I've hinted at, Soulja Boy is also another artist pretty much foundational to the swag era. He released the trap song Turn My Swag On in December of 2008 on his sophomore album, I Soulja Boy Tell 'Em. Probably don't have to explain much about this song because it's remained pretty relevant over the years. In it, Soulja Boy hops up at the bed, turns his swag on, aka starts each day with confidence, gets his money, puts his friends on, puts new songs on the web, rinse and repeat. The song is brash and blaring, supported by a lot of ad-libs by Soulja Boy, as if to say his swag being on should simply be an expectation at this point. The song became popular online, it was a popular party song, just popular in general, especially because that chorus is so quotable. The song has been covered and remixed several times. Carrie Hilson's 2010 version is probably the most popular. Cher Lloyd would go on to cover that version for her viral Britain's Got Talent audition, and she'd later release a song of her own called Swagger Jagger. Additionally, Turn My Swag On was referenced in Willow's Whip My Hair, which came out in 2010. And Beyonce's Hold Up, later released in 2016. But back in 2008, when Vulture asked Soulja Boy what exactly swag was and how one turns it on, he responded, I think swag is very important to rappers. It's the overall appearance and style of an artist. These blue shorts and this blue hat and this $80,000 chain, this jewelry and all these tattoos, that's swag. Swag defines an artist, period. Lil Wayne has his super tattooed, pierced and dread swag. Jay-Z has his New York grown man, Beyonce and 40/40 Club swag. Soulja Boy is on his dance down south, a young 18-year-old comedic swag. It's really just each person's personality. If every rapper had the same swag, it would be kind of boring. The internet and social media, to be more specific, played a massive role in the swag era. At this point, so still late 2000s, sites like Facebook and especially MySpace were integral to spreading both the music and fashion of this era. That's actually how Soulja Boy became so viral so quickly. And he also uploaded his very early songs on a website called SoundClick, where users could upload MP3 files of their music. He even has some songs referencing swag on there called Swag and She Thirsty, with the latter making it on his debut album. Additionally, Soulja Boy would go on to upload his songs, his music videos, and then also dance tutorials for songs like Cranked Out a Bird Walk on his YouTube channel. And these were still the days where YouTube was mostly DIY projects, be it short films, music videos, tutorials, shitposts, not as structured or monitored as it is now, which made it a fun place for trends to start because people just took themselves less seriously on YouTube at the time and it was just less polished overall. It also gave a new generation of artists a more centralized way to get visuals out without having to be like MTV or 106 & Park status first. Aside from virality, a lot of these swag songs caught on because the dances associated with them were done at public events. Swag surfing, for example, weddings, school events, the club, basketball games, campus parties. You just need a song and a group of people. This song came out in March of 2009, released by the Fast Life Youngsters. They purchased the beat on MySpace for just $500 and rapped the song, coming up with the dance kind of accidentally later. Mook, who's 1/3 of the group, said of the dance, "When you listen to the song, it's not really a dance song. We don't give instructions on how to do the dance. The dance we got from some guys on the south side of Atlanta and just happens to go with the song, but it wasn't like how it was today." And when he's saying it wasn't like how it is today, he's talking about how this song comes on in 3 seconds, everyone rushes to the dance floor, puts their arms around everyone on either side to them, and they just automatically know what to do. And of course, he's also pointing to the sense of community the dance inspires, like I said, within just seconds, often happening in the very same club settings the song describes. The song's about having on a fresh outfit at the club, being turned off the Hypnotic, the Patron, and getting your choice of the ladies there. And more broadly, it's just about having a good time, which is why it's well suited to so many events. I would say out of the dances that I'll mention in this video, this is probably the one you see people doing the most still today. Ironically, K.E. on the track, who's the song's producer, he didn't want his first major hit to be a dance song. He was only 19 when he produced this beat, and he said it was because often these songs just became fads and weren't taken as seriously. But he ended up making a classic, even artists reference and use this song, and like I said, within seconds you know what it is. Another crown jewel of the swag era, probably who you're thinking of if you're not thinking of Soulja Boy, are the New Boyz, known mainly for their song You're a Jerk. They were a California hip-hop duo made of Earl Benjamin, known as Ben J, and then Dominic Thomas, called Legacy. They were high school friends who rapped and made beats together and eventually made You're a Jerk because jerking was a popular dance style back then. The song has this icy electronic percussion punctuated throughout with the pitched up phrase, "You're a jerk." Legacy raps in the opening verse, "Got your girl on my swag, she loving them jerkin' songs. Like the new iPod, just touch it to turn her on." And his verse, Ben J notes, "Got a new boy swag in this here for y'all, so they gotta keep it separate like the Jim Crow laws." That new boy swag is something I want to revisit in just a second when we look at the music video for You're a Jerk. And the song, of course, is using the word jerk in 2 ways to refer to a cocky asshole, one with swag though, and then also the dance. And like I mentioned, jerking is a form of street dance that originated in California and was also popular in clubs. As you can tell from the name, it's characterized by fast movements as well as specific dance moves. And maybe they've changed a little over time, but from what I remember, the move a lot of people call jerking is called the reject actually. And then at least in this era, I'm no jerking expert, but you had other popular moves like the pin drop and the cat daddy. Can't tell you how many hours me, my brother, even the neighborhood kids in general, spent looking at online tutorials on how to do these dance moves. Looking at the video, it's very California, it's very colorful, but it's also very youth focused. I would think most of the people in the video are high schoolers, maybe early 20s at most. Because there are so many people in this video, it's very hard to ignore the fashion. It's this clear blend of classic hip-hop fashion with the chains, the large baggy tees, and hats. But you'll also notice that in addition to that, there are a lot of saturated tones, neon colors, and cartoonish graphic tees or accessories. The swag era fashion invokes a lot of the playfulness of the 80s and like that classic hip-hop fashion I mentioned, with a lot of earlier 2000s sensibilities. Like the New Boyz and Soulja Boy, they're not dressed alike. You can definitely tell the difference and also notice that Soulja Boy came slightly before, and they're also from opposite coasts, so their fashions are kind of diverged. But you can tell that even though they look different, they may have begun in a similar place. And if I ask you to name the most prominent fashion accessory or article of clothing from the swag era, I think a lot of you are going to say skinny jeans, specifically colored ones. And they were all the rage at the time, even for different styles beyond the swag era. I had several pairs, everyone had several pairs, you had pairs to complement shirts. And aside from flashy colors, patterns like leopard, zebra, and specifically checkerboard were very popular too. And the skinny jeans were so integral to the swag era, to that New Boy swag, they went on to title their debut album Skinny Jeans and a Mic. And the New Boys said about their album, "It's pretty much like the lifestyle and culture of the typical California teenager put into music. It's going to surprise a lot of people because a lot of people think we just make the jerk songs and dance music." And speaking of, shout out to Tie Me Down. I used to love that song. This video reminded me to go back and listen to it. It's still a bop. Didn't even know what being tied down was at the time, but I knew it was a bop. We're gonna get back into the fashion in a minute, but jerking became such a trend that record labels, they were looking to sign other jerking groups to compete with the New Boys. For example, Arista signed the Rejects, and they were known for their song Cat Daddy. And it wasn't just recording artists or even professional dancers doing these jerking videos. It was basically anyone and everyone because it was the internet. So if you could do the dance, you could post a video. And not only does jerking your jerk get spread quicker, but a lot of that swag era fashion, the skinny jeans, the high top sneakers, the belts, the jewelry. And aside from the hip hop I mentioned, with the swag era fashion, you're also blending a lot of punk styles of past and then also current fashion trends. As for the punk elements, we can see those in the presence of the Converse, the flannel, the moto jackets, or the motorcycle vest. So many accessories being studded, the skinny jeans, the high top boots, and even the presence of mohawks in all hair textures. Willow had one at the time, Prodigy did, my little brother did. Ooh. Look at this cover art for Carrie's Turn My Swag On, both how she's dressed and the lettering. You can't unsee it. And honestly, very similar vibes with Willow's With My Hair cover and also the way that she dressed for performances. I remember being so obsessed with the fashion of Indigo Vanity, who back then was known as the jerking queen. A decade and a half later, every now and then I would think of this sweater. You can definitely see the 80s inspiration here. Back when I did my Energy Never Dies Eras Analyzed a couple months ago, I was watching the Rock That Body video and genuinely thought that all the dancers were dressed up in costumes from the 80s to make it look like it was set back then, and then had to re-record some audio because on my second watch, I realized they were all just wearing current clothing. It was just that heavily 80s inspired. Interestingly though, the point of that song and overall album is how music, fashion, art, and its influence is felt for decades after it's made, so clearly the truth. And like I mentioned in my Indie Sleaze video, an important piece of context to the swag era is that all of this is taking place at the tail end of the Great Recession, which lasted from December of 2007 to June of 2009. So we're also in our recession pop era. And looking at the Google Trends data, swag really takes off, or people really start searching for it in early 2009, then continues trending upwards for years with lots of big peaks. And You're a Jerk would peak on the charts later in the summer in August. Most of the popular fashions you could find at mall stores like Journeys, DTLR, Wet Seal, Hot Topic, Rue 21, Zoomies, Forever 21. Then of course, a lot of other pieces would be thrifted, borrowed, or otherwise repurposed. And obviously trends are being followed, but again, similar to Indie Sleaze, it's why you've seen less one-to-one replications of a look, because online shopping was absolutely around, but it wasn't the giant that it is now. So sometimes you just could not find an exact item that you wanted and you just had to go with something different. If someone was wearing something you like, maybe they would mention where it was from. It might be ID'd in a magazine. Maybe you'd find it on a Pinterest board or one of those This Celeb's Closet websites, but there was no automatic one-click link in bio. And something else I've always loved about the swag era is the sort of ironic use of a lot of children's media. You were cool as hell if you had a Cookie Monster snapback, that Hello Kitty t-shirt, but then paired it with some edgy leather or some studs to show that you obviously weren't a little baby watching baby cartoons like you were 17, duh. You could also buy specific shirts or hats that said swag like me, they hate my swag, or even just talking about the haters in general. Any iteration of that was also popular. Because you're really swaggy when you have people hating on the swag. And that hater concept, hating, being a hater, that's something derived directly from hip-hop culture too. And returning to the social media of it all, it's also around this time that apps like Twitter and Instagram were in their infancy. Building off established sites like MySpace and Facebook, you could now post more curated pictures, or even if you kept it candid, it was easier to post the pictures in real time from your phone rather than upload an album on Facebook later. Also, we have to talk about the photo editing. I miss the photos being slightly blurry because they were on an iPhone 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, maybe 5C. Or they were photo booth or Uvu screenshots, later edited with the contrast and saturation up fried to hell. And then when the Instagram filters came out, it was even easier. And even then, it was all about the vignette on top of the deep frying. With the Zendaya deep fry photos, you could make a whole photo album with those alone. And the poses in general were just so fun. The peace signs, but you had to be cool about the peace signs, the bubble cheeks, the finger guns, the dead eye stare that Boyz did, the hand blocking the face, the brim of your hat blocking your face because you were looking at your shoes or something. And all of these were so clearly posed, but all meant to look off guard. Like, even if the pose was purposeful, maybe you didn't know the picture was going to be snapped in that exact moment. And I'm making fun, but I was doing this shit back then too, and I was having a blast doing it. I'd do it again. We were cringe, but we were free. In the pop space, maybe the earliest song I can think of noted for its reference to swagger is probably Kesha's TikTok.
Lining up, cause they hear we got swagger, but we kick them to the curb unless they look like Mick Jagger.
And this song is actually full of hip-hop references. Apparently Kesha's sort of Beastie Boy style of delivery is what helped her get her recording contracts. And this kind of out-of-place reference to Mick Jagger, clearly used just to rhyme with swagger, had people so confused that a rumor started going around that Kesha was Mick Jagger's daughter. Of course, she's not. And there were actually quite a few swagger Mick Jagger references in this era. Not to say Mick Jagger is a nobody, because that's not true. He just wasn't in his prime in the 2010s, so I do think it's fair to say this was mostly done for rhyme. It's using swagger like us in the line, my swagger is Mick Jagger, and then I also mentioned it being the name of a Cher Lloyd song. In that one, Jagger's name is used as a play on the word jacker, I'm assuming as in a copycat, someone who's always trying to do what Cher's done.
Swagger Jagger, you should get some of your own.
And this song was released in 2011, and it was Cher's debut single after appearing on X Factor, so I wonder if they encouraged her to write a swag-related song because her audition was so popular. Or maybe she just loves swag so much and that's why she chose to do it. Also, to bring it back to Soulja Boy for a moment, it was in 2010 that he put out Pretty Boy Swag. Another moment. Another extremely quotable song. Be it the title or the drawn-out get out of the way. Pretty Boy Swag functions as both noun and verb here, with Soulja Boy saying his pretty boy swag makes girls flock to him, but he also cautions people to steer clear when he pretty boy swags. An example of an artist or group formed directly as a result of the swag era is the Cali Swag District, known for their song Teach Me How to Dougie. Doubt I need to explain much, but similar to the Jerk or Cat Daddy, it's another song from a California group heavily associated with the dance, this time the Dougie.
Taste me how to Doug, taste me how to Doug, taste me how to Doug, taste me how to Doug.
The group was formed by Death Row Records artist Big Y and film producer Daryl Potts. And the Cali Swag District does have an album out, but their only song to chart on the Hot 100 was Teach Me How to Dougie. So definitely a one-hit wonder group, but they did contribute to one of the most popular dances of that decade. Everyone was Dougieing. Kay Upton, Elmo, Michelle Obama. And Teach Me How to Dougie came out in April of 2010, with it going viral relatively quickly after. Since we were already in the midst of the swag era, it was on the charts by summer. Dougie tutorials were everywhere on YouTube at the time, and again, I was a middle schooler, so you were Dougieing at the dance, recess, the pep rally in your neighborhood. Similar to the New Boys, the Cali Swag District style is very swag with the chains and high top combo, those candy colored zip hoodies, and you always had to either have a hat or shoes in the exact same color. Another thing I really like about the swag era style is that it is very mix and matchy-esque, but it's also very matchy-matchy too, in a way that you're not even ashamed of. Unfortunately, part of the reason the Cali Swag District wasn't able to release much music beyond that debut album was because member M-Bone was killed in a 2011 drive-by at the age of just 22. And then just a few years later, in 2014, member JR passed away at the age of 25. According to Rolling Stone, he was suffering from sickle cell but died from cardiac arrest, so I'm not sure if it was related to having sickle cell. But Corey, another member of the Cali Swag District, had written, "Sickle cell took my brother away from me today," so potentially. And really sad because they were all young, but by 2014, only 2 out of the 4 members were living. So understandably, the group disbanded in 2015. Another dance popular in the swag era was shuffling, popularized in the US likely by LMFAO. Shuffling originated in Melbourne in the 80s, likely not a coincidence it's an 80s dance, honestly.
Shake that.
And y'all have probably seen this video making the rounds again. It's yet another we were cringe, but we were free. Looking at their big hits like Sexy and I Know It, Party Rock Anthem, Shot, Sorry for Party Rocking, none of these songs make direct references to swag by name. Yet, the majority of them clearly reference swag as a concept, exuding this recklessness that's attractive or straight up sex appeal even in Sexy and I Know It. And clearly LMFAO's fashion straight out of the 80s. They're another that stick out to me immediately with swag era fashion. Everything neon, they did the animal print more than anyone else damn near, especially on the skinny jeans. And LMFAO, they were on a ton of mood or Pinterest boards. And I didn't know this at the time, but Red Foo actually had a clothing line back then called The Freak, and it sold a lot of similar pieces to that loud pattern stuff that he and Sky Blue would wear on stage. Also, something else that I forgot to mention earlier that looking at LMFAO's fashion reminded me of is that with a lot of this swag era fashion, there's not as much of a focus on gender or a preoccupation with looking too feminine. The goal is just to look bold and unique, and that's where the power, the appeal comes from, be it masculinity, femininity, anything in between. I was thinking of any prominent examples of swag era fashion that used a lot of skirts, dresses, and frilliness, and absolutely, of course, my mind went to OMG girls.
Girls steady hating 'cause they loving my swag and my pretty girl bag.
Of course, they did wear some pants and some leggings, but I feel like just as frequently they would pull off a bedazzled dress or those brightly colored voluminous tulle cupcake skirts. To sort of edge it up, they'd often accessorize with a bit of black, leather, or just like a funny graphic tee. And theirs was actually one of my favorite takes on the swag era style because it's a very glitzy, feminine blend of punk and hip hop. Nicki Minaj also wore these skirts a bunch too at the time, a very good mix of swag, hip hop obviously, but also that Barbie persona. I think something else that makes these looks usually land for me is that you can't be too subtle about it or it just looks weird. So these looks end up being very layered, colorful, often over-accessorized, but I always think it looks pretty fun. By the end of 2011, swag was clearly king as it had been, but so much so that it was named Hip Hop's Word of the Year. Even in their announcement, NPR noted that swag wasn't a brand new word, just one that hip hop and later pop had popularized to an unignorable level. And then more generally, because of its popularity, swag became a word that was just used like a period, a purr, a hell yeah, a slay. You might even say hashtag swag if you were feeling a little spicy. Because this was still a time where even teen media still existed, there were several teen stars influenced by the swag era, and we ate it up. So of course, we gotta swag it out.
I'm gonna swag it out.
And swag it out really just means using your swag to shake off life's problems, the haters, making lemonade out of lemons. And this song is full of 2011 appropriate references like Nicki's Pink Friday, Beyonce, and Green Day. And throughout the song, Zendaya explains that due to her swag, so many haters are just flocking to her. Very stressful, but her hair and nails are done, so of course they are. The Swag It Out video is like a little time capsule for the era's fashion. I can look at almost every kid in this video, especially the girls, and see something I either owned or wanted to own. And since this was the early Zendaya days and her father is credited as executive producing this video, I'm gonna assume they might have even just had the extra show up in their own clothes to save money. Even the Beats logo is blurred, so I'm gonna assume the budget was something sensible and there were no actual endorsements yet. I know the song's become a meme, but because Zendaya was like 14 when the song came out, it's cute to see something that's got her looking like a teenager and not got her looking and moving like she's 24. And she did age it up just a tad for replay because she herself would have been a little older and that song came out in 2013. I'm not sure what exact year, maybe 2012-ish, but you can see the swag era fashion become slightly more muted, and to me it takes on this more futuristic rather than eclectic vibe. Not to say that vintage inspiration fully leaves, because it doesn't. Like looking at Zendaya's styling for the replay performances, you can still see the items like the high tops, those fingerless moto gloves, the leather, but the looks overall take on a more monochromatic palette. And just looking at these collared peekaboo tank tops and the pleather jersey tops, everything she was wearing, I was like, woo, I used to have so many of both of those types of shirts. And I also noticed this transition happening with the fashion of mindless behavior.
Travel all across the world just to meet her. Keep me on the fly.
They're fashionable overall. Take any group picture of them, they're on point, swag out. Again, not really colorful, but the layering, the accessorizing, they were gonna eat every time. In a lot of their interviews, they did talk about their fashion just as much as their music. And often one of the group members, usually Princeton, when an interviewer asked to describe their fashion, one of the first things they would say is that they were fashion forward. And at least from what they said, they got some control or at least some choice in what they were wearing. And they also mentioned being huge fans of both Michael and Janet Jackson, and they toured with Janet actually. And I do think you can see influence from both Jacksons in their fashion. Justin Bieber, probably the teen pop star back then, pop boy at least. I think he's another example of the super coordinated swag era fashion. Purple down for a while, and then later he was doing that sort of futuristic look with the tank top, the parachute pants, and again, a pair of high tops. Hated to see him coming. In general, so taking the fashion out of it for a moment, I do think Bieber's most popular swag reference, though, undoubtedly, it's the swag on you, chilling by the fire while we eating fondue. Either that or him seductively whispering swaggy. Both come from his 2012 song, Boyfriend.
I'm crazy on this hook like a world with swaggy.
I'd like to be.
Boyfriend is this mid-tempo Mike Posner penned song in which Bieber explains why he'd make the perfect boyfriend. His swag, of course, is part of it. I found several articles from the time questioning what swag on you meant, with some even admitting that was their first introduction to the swag craze, though we were a few years in. I don't think swag on you is an actual phrase, but I always took it as Bieber saying, I'm gonna put my swag on you, like, turn the charm on. I'm not sure if this is where people agree that the Jerome Bieber era started, but I do believe that bricks were being laid. Looking at the trends data, it seems like around October 2012, swag does start to die down, with it never fully flatlining because, people still definitely use this word here and there because it's a word, even outside of the swag era. Seems like a lot of that folkier pop, what people are now calling stomp clad hay, getting popular might have had something to do with it because that aesthetic had been popular for a while too. Seems like it kind of overtook the swag era though by like 2012, 2013-ish. I don't think there's really an official end of the swag era. Some were saying 2013, others are saying 2014, which I do think is debatable. I was thinking of any songs that might have shifted things in the pop landscape, and honestly, the one that I came up with off the top of my head was Royals definitely shifting the culture, but I don't know if I would give that song the power of ending a whole era entirely. Because one, things do just naturally run their course, nothing trends forever, and then secondly, outside of Lorde, which probably influenced Lorde also, I feel like the idea of being more indie and mysterious slowly grew more popular, especially with younger people due to sites like Tumblr. And I was also like, I wonder if the cultural appropriation conversation shifted things a bit, but I feel like that wasn't necessarily a thing until late 2014, around 2015-ish, after most people would agree that the swag era was over. But I guess it doesn't mean that people weren't already maybe frustrated or speaking out about it. And I was asking myself, do I think the swag era returned in some form in the later 2010s, looking at the music and fashion and hip-hop's dominance in that era? But I'm like, I would still consider that to be more the trap era. And I know that swag is not a genre, whereas trap is, but I'm like, what connections am I seeing really other than hip-hop, again, being more dominant, like I said, and some fun clothing? And a lot of it really isn't even as flashy or as 80s inspired as it used to be. I don't know what I think yet, but I don't think I'd necessarily be surprised if we dabble back into the swag era. Since earlier in this decade, we spent a lot of time fascinated with the 70s, and it seems like we're just now transitioning full on into that 80s nostalgia. But even if 80s nostalgia does come back in full effect, it doesn't mean that it has to be 80s pop or hip hop inspiration, because it could be a completely different genre, especially since country music is more popular right now than it was in the late 2000s, early 2010s, it seems. So I don't know if a country swag era is going to be in the cards, or if we're just going to use this wave of 80s fascination to revive something different. Y'all know the drill. Thoughts, opinions, feelings about the swag era overall. I'm sure it's going to run the gamut from thank you for the deep dive down memory lane, I missed this so much, to I hated this, it was tacky, y'all pissed me off, I celebrated when it ended. Other than, just getting to relive some of the music and the fashions, I was like, damn, this is when like a lot of the pop culture figures, especially the artists who are still kind of around and kicking today, I'm like, this is when a lot of them were at their peak. They were at their coolest. I guess they didn't call it the swag era for nothing, but I'm like, remember when these people at least seemed kind of decent, most of them? Something else I just want to re-emphasize for a second is the recency bias when it comes to fashion and how frequently trends are recycled. You can see it happening in different ways, but looking at that 2010s fashion, they were recycling the 80s just as much as we're currently getting accused of recycling the 90s and 2000s. Albeit, I would say, in a more creative way. But again, this is why I don't think it's bad for things to continuously influence one another. That being said, I already did my time in skinny jean jail, so if that trend does indeed come back, I will not be partaking. Another question I do have for y'all is when you think the swag era ended. Like I said, it seems most people agree around 2013, 2014. I don't know. For me personally, I just feel like 2013 to 2015 in my brain, that's a completely different chunk of pop culture than like 2010 to 2012. I would even say maybe like 2009 to 2012. I don't know. I don't really lump 2013, 2014 to the swag era, but I'm just one girly online. It's not up to me. So I want to know what you guys think. Thoughts, opinions, trends, fave people from the swag era down below. That way we can chat as we always do. As always, thank you so very much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so that you can stick around for more. Also, if you'd like to become a channel member and get early access to videos, the link is in the description. And again, thank you so very much for watching. I love you all so very much, and we'll see you so very soon. Bye-bye.